Welcome to Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannon. Today, I'm going to review Chapter 8 of my newest book entitled God in Our Superdeterministic Universe, the number one argument for the existence of God, which is available on Amazon Kindle. Chapter 8 is entitled Pick Your Fantasy. There are over 8 billion people in the world, and they all have belief systems. But they can't all be right. In fact, where belief systems directly contradict each other, you know that one of them's got to be wrong. So, if your belief system does not include the truth that the universe is a block reality without temporal causation and that it is predetermined, then your belief system is flawed, at least in part. Now, Swedish physicist Dr. Hansen proved that the universe is a static block reality without temporal causation, and it's predetermined. You can find his proof in Physics Essays, volume 33, number 2, from June 2020, page 216. Understanding the actual physical reality that we live in and what it is has got to be fundamentally important to any truthful belief system that you hold. And if you don't hold that truth about our universe, then your belief system is at least in part a fantasy, and you're simply picking a fantasy to believe it. Frankly, many people simply choose the belief system that is most attractive to them without really being concerned about whether it's really true or not. They just pick their fantasy, the one that they like the most. So some people just deny objective truth, and they consider any belief system you have as uh, picking the fantasy that is most conducive to you coping with life. And they see nothing wrong with that. That perspective is fundamentally flawed because there is such a thing as objective truth. And because the universe is predetermined, then those objective truths are predetermined in the universe. So, some common fantasies that people hold are one, that you can be whoever you want to be. That's just not true in a predetermined universe. You are predetermined to be who you're going to be. You don't get to be whoever you want to be. Another common fantasy is that there's such a thing as free will on Earth. The universe is a static block reality without temporal causation. Everything is predetermined. Therefore, there is no such thing as free will on Earth. Um, Another fantasy that people believe is that you can change the future. You can't. The future is predetermined and set in stone. You cannot change it. Finally, another fantasy people hold is that temporal causation is real, that things change in time, that change in time is being continuously caused by nature. That's not true either. There's no such thing as temporal causation. That's an illusion of the mind. So there's some fantasies for you. Uh, another question somebody could ask is, well, is Christianity a fantasy? And the answer is no. So why not? Well, the logic goes like this. The universe is predetermined. Dr. Hansen proved it. Therefore, it requires a supremely intelligent God to create it non-temporally. And because it's predetermined, then God has to know of and understand the most advanced technologies and objects that God puts into that predetermined universe in order to put it in a predetermined universe. So he has to be supremely intelligent in order to understand these advanced technologies and objects. So a supremely intelligent God is real. Now, once you accept that, then it's reasonable to infer that that supremely intelligent God would want to communicate his will to beings which he's predetermined to exist and to have the capacity to comprehend God's existence, and his will. So that's really a no-brainer. If there's a supremely intelligent God, and there is, then it's a no-brainer that that God would want to communicate his will to human beings who he predetermined to create with the capacity to understand his will. Now, God would have to also be divinely simple, that is, without parts, because God is the creator of parts, not the creator of himself. And therefore, God doesn't have a mouth, a literal mouth. He would need a mouthpiece on earth to tell people his will. That mouthpiece is Jesus Christ. Now, how do you know Jesus was the mouthpiece of God? Well, if you're predetermining the existence of the universe and you want people to know your will, then a great indicator of that is that a religion which is predominant, such as Christianity, with 2.6 billion followers on the planet, would be the mechanism God would use to give his message to humanity. So the fact that Christianity has 2.6 billion followers lets one reasonably infer that indeed Christianity is the message God is giving to humanity. And that messenger was Jesus on earth. And because God has the power to have the highly improbable occur in a predetermined universe, then yes, Jesus could very well have performed miracles because God predetermined these miracles and predetermined Jesus' existence in the flesh on earth to perform these miracles. So all these things make sense. So, yes, at its root, under superdeterminism and the idea of a predetermined universe, Christianity makes perfect sense. It's reasonable. It's not a fantasy. So, because Christianity is not a fantasy, there's no reason why Christianity should appeal to those who tend to believe in fantasies. There's no need for that. And yet I see that happening. So you might see certain Christians appealing to what I call Comic Con Christians, which are those Christians who have a tendency to believe in fantasies. Um, so lots of times what you'll see is these big name Christians appealing to fantasy writers like J.R.R. Tolkien or C.S. Lewis in trying to bring new membership in. And the reason is because they're targeting people who have a tendency to believe in fantasy. That's why they're citing fantasy writers. There's no need for that. Christianity is not a fantasy. Another uh, attempt you might see these people make at bringing in these people who tend to believe in fantasy is claiming that Christianity involves a second naivete. And all that really means is that, when you get older, you simply accept Christianity and its mysteries, and you don't ask too many questions about it, too many hard questions. You simply accept it. Um, Again, that's an appeal to fantasy thinking. That's completely unnecessary. Christianity has a solid basis in fact, in physics under superdeterminism, and reasonable inferences therefrom. There's no reason to go the fantasy route and make Christianity seem as if it's a fantasy belief system with this aura of, fantasy writers. um, you're just doing a disservice to Christianity if you're doing that. Just to many people, it may seem that the idea that non-temporal causation um, is necessary for the existence of the universe because temporal causation is not real is itself a fantasy. Uh, but it's not. The, the idea of non temporal causation is simply that there are such things as timeless physical realities and that those things can exist or not exist. And because that's true, then they can be created into existence. It's a timeless reality that they're created into. But logically, it makes perfect sense that non temporal causation would exist. People have a problem with believing temporal causation does not exist because you live your life, all you see is temporal causation. You don't think that, oh, well, this is really just an illusion of my brain. But it's not real. Temporal causation is not real. So it's difficult to wrap your mind around the idea that temporal causation is not real. But if you know something about the Bloch universe or Einstein's relativity, it becomes a lot clearer to you and much, much more plausible when you think of the universe as a manifold of abutting hyperplanes of space time, and that these hyperplanes are timeless physical realities, that you're simply uh, an object that appears on some of these abutting hyperplanes, and that your appearance changes through these hyperplanes, and that's your experience of time. That makes a lot of sense. An analogy would be like a flip book, where on some of the pages, these are the hyperplanes of space time. You appear in the margins, and you change. Your appearance changes from page to page, and as you flip through the pages, you can see yourself move. In fact, you could live your entire life like that, and that's what the block reality is like. So once you start to understand a block reality, block universe, it starts to make a lot of sense that temporal causation is not, in fact, real. Uh, Something else that could help you understand how temporal causation is not real is something I call hyperplane metaphysics. So, in a block reality, there are hyperplanes, which are essentially slices of the universe, whether locally or perhaps non locally. And you can think of it as a frozen moment of time. And the stacking of these hyperplanes is the block reality. It's a higher dimensional reality. You don't see it because you're only in one hyperplane at a time. You don't see the rest of them, but they're there. Um, so when you think about abutting hyperplanes, uh, and you think about, well, okay, there's no such thing as temporal causation. How could that be? Uh, what explains why one hyperplane abuts another hyperplane? So you know, one idea might be, well, they temporally cause each other to exist, and that's why they abut each other. But temporal causation is not real. So that can't be the reason. So there has to be another reason. One possibility is something I call the transitive property of hyperplanes, which basically says that if hyperplane A coexists with hyperplane B, and hyperplane B it coexists with hyperplane C, then hyperplane A must coexist with hyperplane C. So the idea behind that would be, well, there's these hyperplanes and they share some common information, but remaining portions of those hyperplanes don't share that common information. But because they share common information, they must coexist with one another, including the information they do not share. So if you take enough of these abutting hyperplanes and you have this principle, this sharing, this information sharing principle, you could end up with this basically tight knit block reality of hyperplanes, abutting hyperplanes through the transitive property of hyperplanes. So the existence of a block reality actually does make sense. And when you think about, okay, you have these abutting hyperplanes and they share information, but some of the information they don't share, but they coexist with one another because they share common information. And you start thinking about, well, what about the information that they don't share? And then you think of this tight knit physical block reality. You could see that the information that they don't share is going to be slightly different than the information that they do share. And that slight change between abutting hyperplanes in information, this small gradual change, is what we see as strict determinism in the appearance of objects that exist throughout those hyperplanes. So that explains the existence of strictly deterministic physics, or the behavior of objects in these hyperplanes in a strictly deterministic fashion. You can imagine it being caused by this transitive property of hyperplanes. That explains strict determinism and the laws of physics. So when you think about it that way, you realize, yeah, you don't actually need temporal causation. You could have some sort of transcendent principle like the hyperplane, like the transitive property of hyperplanes. And in this block reality, this tight knit block reality, it could create a strictly determinist, an appearance of strictly deterministic laws of physics. So yes, it all makes sense that that could happen. Now, those hyperplanes that do not share common information cannot coexist with these other hyperplanes. So where are they? Well, they don't they can't exist in our universe because they can't fit in this tightly knit fit block reality of shared common information. So where are they? Well, they're not in our universe. And because they don't share information, they can't coexist with the hyperplanes in our universe. So if they exist, they would have to be in a disconnected universe, in a multiverse. But if it's a disconnected universe, then there's no way to say it exists with us. You can't say it coexists with our universe. How would you ever prove that it's even there? So, in order for it to exist, it would have to exist or coexist with our universe relative to a creator reality like God. So, because disconnected universes, in order to coexist, would require a God from which it could be said that they coexist with one another relative to this creator reality. Now, um, because hyperplanes that don't share the same information don't exist in our block reality, then that means that there can't be a greater space in which the abutting hyperplanes of our universe are ordered. Because if there was a greater space in which they were ordered, then you could order them any way you wanted. And you wouldn't have to worry about them sharing information in order to coexist. That means there's no greater space than our block reality. That means there's no greater time. It means hyperplanes are not created in time in a greater space. Rather, hyperplanes are timeless physical realities. So again, you can think of non-temporal causation. A hyperplane being a timeless physical reality could exist or not exist. Therefore, it can be created to exist. That's non-temporal causation. Um, because there's no greater space from which you could create hyperplanes, then that means hyperplanes must be created from non-existence because there's nothing else to create them out of. So it has to be from non-existence. But this is exactly what we say God does. We say God creates the universe from non-existence, or creatio ex nihilo. So superdeterminism and the idea that temporal causation is not real aligns perfectly with our Christian understanding of the Creator God, the God who creates from non existence, or creatio ex nihilo. In fact, God is a timeless being. Now, if God is a timeless being and he creates something, well, you would expect that whatever he creates would also be timeless because God is timeless. So it's a natural fit that a timeless God would create timeless abutting hyperplanes of space-time in a manifold or block universe or block reality. And that temporal causation is not real, but we nevertheless have this illusion of time because the abutting hyperplanes are ordered such that there is strict determinism, which makes it so that we perceive that time goes on, like a person in the flip book. So superdeterminism is a perfect fit with our Christian understanding of a timeless creator God who creates from non existence. There's a lot to like about superdeterminism, and it shows that Christianity is no fantasy. It's based on physics and reasonable inferences. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. Uh, my next video will be on chapter 9, which is entitled Death to Deism. So that sounds fun. All right, take care.